What's up, comic book fans? This is Pete from Comic Books Transformed, and I'm here with my very good friend Brian. Brian, are you ready for our final episode of Comic Books Transformed?
Apparently, yes.
Yes.
Apparently, I'll be doing my own offshoot show of woke superhero reviews.
Yes, it's called Core's Hair Cares, and you can find them on
That's
Twitter. There you go.
a good one.
What do you call it? The reason why I'm saying we're going to get canceled is because I'm going to complain a lot about She-Hulk, and I feel like that is going to make it look like I am some kind of incel misogynist. So,
Yeah, I'm just gonna call you Todd this episode.
ooh, take that, Todd. But the thing is, I want to point out that I'm not an incel misogynist. I love my wife very much. I have two young daughters. I love women. I work in a profession where mainly work with women. I don't think that the problem with She Hulk is because it is about a female character and that it sort of leans more towards female shows. I think that the problem is actually the storytelling itself. But Brian, you're going to just totally contradict me right now, aren't you?
It's possible.
Yes, Brian, I think you were a fan of this week's episode.
I was. I did like it. Yes.
Okay. So,
Maybe not to the point where you're thinking though.
okay. All right, so then let me get the ball rolling real quick. Okay, this is how I feel. I kind of feel like regardless of the subject matter, like regardless of the fact it's about a woman or a man, or any kind of these issues that a woman might face. Like, have you ever gone to a school play that was like for kids that were like younger than you? Like, have you ever gone and seen a school play?
Yes.
Okay. You know how like sometimes they put all their effort into it and they tell all their jokes and they're acting, but like it just kind of doesn't hit the mark, right? Like the jokes maybe kind of fall flat. Has it ever happened to you?
Uh, sure.
Yeah. I kind of feel like this show, it's like I know what they're intending to do. You can kind of see what they're intending to do, but it's like it just doesn't hit it. And like I've said this every time we've reviewed the show, like the jokes kind of don't hit the mark. And there's like maybe two or three really good jokes in this episode, but for the most part, I just feel like the show, uh, it like for every seven jokes or 10 jokes, there's seven that land, and like, I mean, wow, it's early, seven that don't land and three that do. I mean, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I can agree with that ratio for the most part. I don't think I don't laugh that much during the show. I
Yeah,
don't think it. I mean, I'm trying to think of like what shows do make me laugh these days, and I keep thinking coming back to we've talked about What We Do in the Shadows before, and I know you're not like a huge fan of that show, and you think that people just think it's funny because they curse a lot, really.
yeah.
And I'm kind of wondering if this is the same kind of humor as that show, but without the cursing.
That is interesting. Yeah, I'm really glad that you bring that up because there's sort of like there's a whole bunch of shows that I don't like, but I think that people really like. Like Modern Family, that never appealed to
I like
me.
Modern Family. I like the first couple seasons. I watched it a lot, but I definitely trailed off after a while. I do think there were some really good moments in that show, though, here and there. I still see clips of it here and there. I'm like, oh, that's actually pretty funny
Well,
because
like
they do some good setups in that show sometimes, you know.
okay,
And I feel like this show doesn't have that. I think that's kind of what I'm looking for. Almost, I'm looking for them to set up some kind of big joke and then have it land later on. It just doesn't happen, I guess, or misses, I guess.
okay. Well, let me ask you this: on Modern Family, right? Like, is every single character a caricature, or are there like people that just kind of seem like regular people?
Um, I, I wouldn't call them all caricatures.
Yeah,
Some more than others.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, but I think in a comedy you need slight amount of a caricature of a person
yeah.
because real life isn't that funny,
Right.
I guess.
Oh, okay. Well, how about some common ground? You are a fan of Arrested Development, right?
Oh yes, I love the first film.
Okay, so most of the family, the Bluth family, are like over the top, kind of weirdo, goofy
Yes,
people, right?
100%. Yeah.
But like even like if we look at like George Michael, for instance, right? he's kind of silly and goofy, and you could say he's a little bit of a character, but he also makes a lot of these comments where he kind of points out how ridiculous the other people are. And that's, George Michael. And I mean, obviously Michael in Arrested Development is like the straight man, and he is reacting to all these other weirdos, right?
Well, I think what's interesting about that is that he's the straight man, but he's not.
Right.
Yeah. He
right.
thinks he's the straight man, essentially.
Right. But like, and I know you're also a fan of like Always Sunny in Philadelphia, right?
Yes.
So like each member of the gang or whatever in that does over the top crazy stuff.
They're very over the top, yes.
Right, but like they all also kind of have moments where they all kind of seem like normal, or they'll kind of like make jokes about how the other person's not normal.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Like I feel like with She-Hulk, it's like everybody's just over the top and goofy, and there's not that sort of like, oh well, here's the real world. Like the real world just doesn't kind of creep in. It's just always like over the top and ridiculous.
Yeah, except but I think that's kind of what a She-Hulk comic is originally, you know?
Yeah, okay. So I agree with that too. That's one thing, because honestly, my main thing with this show, my main problem is the actual like ending of this, right?
Okay.
That's my main problem, and it is all about breaking the fourth wall. That's the whole thing, is breaking the fourth wall, right?
Okay.
And like when John Byrne did She-Hulk and he did that fourth wall breaking stuff, it was kind of like the comic wasn't doing so well, and so they like would break the fourth wall to kind of acknowledge that they knew that the comic wasn't doing so well, and it was sort of like this self-deprecating thing, but it was like I don't know how to explain it. Like it wasn't like.
Well, I think in the comic they were actively aware of the comics, lacking in sales,
right?
Because they created month by month here. But in this case, it was all done in advance because the show had to be finished before it aired.
Right.
So you're saying the self-deprecation wasn't earned?
I think that's a really good point that you make there, because the comic, it's like it's every month, and it's not like it's all planned out and all filmed in one shot. It's like they can kind of adjust things slightly every month.
I mean, I'm sure obviously there's more planning involved than just like they don't start work on the next issue once the one comes out. Like it's planned in advance, but it's a little more fluid in that sense.
Very good point. Very good point. It's like, yeah. And I think that though that there's this sort of like humbleness that the comic has, and it's like poking fun at themselves, but the way that She-Hulk does it, it's like this thing called like lampshading. Do you know what lampshading is? Have I ever mentioned it on the show?
Yeah, but you give me a quick refresher.
So lampshading is like when you have a movie or a show or a play, and like basically they make a joke about something to kind of be like, see, we know we're doing this, but they're still kind of doing the thing they're making fun of. So like an example I could think of for She-Hulk would be like, Wong is on the show. He's like Twitter armor for a week, and it's like they're making fun of the fact that they've brought Wong onto the show to kind of appeal to the fans, but they still are like using Wong to appeal to the fans. You know what I'm saying?
Sure. Yeah. Okay.
So it's kind of like, well, it's okay that we are doing this because we're pointing out that we know we're doing it.
I get that. Yes, and I think and there are definitely instances in this episode in particular where that happens.
Right. And I know I'm talking a lot, but I'm just real passionate about this, and I kind of want to change your mind too. But like two examples I think of fourth wall breaking are Wayne's World and Deadpool, the movie Deadpool, right? In both of those cases, they kind of get you filled in on like the character, how they're feeling, and maybe like a little bit of backstory to explain like, oh, this person does this, and they're like letting you in. You're like the friend that they're letting in. And in She-Hulk, I feel like it's all just kind of like, this is what we're doing for this episode, and it's just kind of poking fun at the Marvel formula and stuff, and it's not necessarily like showing us more about the character or like getting us on the character's side. You know? Look, like, and one last thing, and I'm going to shut up. I promise. the one last thing is that this show is heavily influenced by Fleabag, which is a show about a woman and like her life, right? And it's in Britain, and the main character, they never say her name, so we just call her Fleabag. But she always breaks the fourth wall, and it's always to kind of show how she's always thinking and feeling, and it kind of shows that she has these problems, but she does it in a funny way. But it's this very like intimate thing where it's like you're kind of seeing inside their mind, and she's kind of talking about the other characters' motivations, so you kind of see about them, and so it's this very like intimate kind of humbled thing. Whereas I feel like, go ahead.
I have not watched Fleabag before, but I'm very curious to check it out now. And maybe this is why I'm not as harsh on this show. Is that a more R-rated show?
Absolutely, absolutely.
And again, I go back to my point earlier about like, is this like, would this show be elevated if they cursed? And I honestly think it would be. If they went full into adult content and language, rather than dipping a toe into a more family friendly version of it.
Okay, you know what? That is actually a really good point, because I think like before, I made that comparison to the school play. Like obviously they are going to have cursing in school plays, or like be like, look at this boner, or like he just ejaculated. They're not going to say that like a fifth grade school play, but this is so Disney-fied, right? This show. Yeah. So they'll talk about like her going on dates and stuff and all these kind of things, but they can't go there. That's a very, very good point.
Yeah.
That's a very good point.
Yeah. So
go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. You can continue.
Okay, well I still have one last thing to say about the fourth wall breaking.
Of course.
So we established that the fourth wall breaking is essentially Jen always commenting on the episode itself. It's always like, oh, there's still more to this episode. What's going on? They're tagging the scene. It's always about the show, right? That her little fourth wall breaking, and it's established in the very first scene that she could break the fourth wall, but it's not established like this is her power that she can break the fourth wall. This is what makes her special, and like in the end, the fourth wall stuff is kind of the action that she takes to resolve the problem, right? Like she like literally she's dissatisfied with the way the story's going, so she like breaks the fourth wall. They go to that Marvel menu, and she jumps out of it and then goes to like Hollywood or whatever to go confront the writers, and that's like her actively going to change the story. But I feel like the show isn't set up in a way to make it like, oh, her fourth wall breaking is how she's going to fix everything. Do you know what I'm saying?
I do understand you. So there's no precedent for her being able to do this. I suppose you're saying, so it feels unearned.
Thank you. Yes.
I disagree with you though. I mean, I don't think it matters that if that's her power or not. I think the fact that they always broke the fourth wall in a meta way of speaking about the show, this is just a culmination of that.
Okay.
I think they did set a precedent for that. I mean, they don't acknowledge it as being a power of She-Hulk's or anything like that, but like you said, every episode when she breaks the fourth wall, it's always something about the episode or the episode structure for the most part. And I think this is just the evolution of that. This is just as far as they can take that.
Okay. Well, one thing I was going to kind of give it credit for was that when she finally goes and confronts Kevin, who's like this sort of AI that's basically Kevin Feige, but it's like a robot, right? Yeah. When she goes to confront him, she becomes Jen again, which I really liked that. And then I like that she essentially, like a lawyer, kind of pleads her case about the ending being a certain way.
Yep.
But what I don't like about that, I really like the idea of her being Jen as a lawyer to like resolve everything. But what I don't like about it is that Kevin doesn't like really push back. Kevin's not intimidating. It's not like there's like a real challenge when she's a lawyer and she has to kind of like overcome it. It's just like she becomes a lawyer. She's like, hey, this ending sucks because of this, this, and this. And he's like, hey, I guess you're right. Let's change it. Like, it's not like there's this like tension. I think it probably because the show is so short.
Yes.
It's not like he's like, oh, we're going to double down and we're going to have the Red Hulk come in or something like it. There's nothing like that. It's just like, she's like, hey, this sucks. And so let's change it. And he's like, okay, let's change it. And they change everything. And I feel like the show itself was setting up everything she did not like about the finale, with the exception of the one guy turning himself into a Hulk. I mean, that was so over the top and ridiculous.
Yeah.
But everything else sort of seemed like that's where the show was going, and not Bruce coming back from space. But it's like the writers were setting it up, and then they kind of use this excuse of like, oh, well, we're trying to do this Marvel ending, and that's what's bad, and She-Hulk has to fix it. But it's like, you set the show up. You could have done a different plot. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Like, you can't just like say, oh, well, it's a Marvel ending, and that's the problem. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I understand. I can agree to that to an extent. They definitely wrote it that way with the intention of doing it this way, but it's weird that they wrote 9 episodes of it just to say that this is dumb. Like, yeah, I totally can agree with that.
Okay.
Also, I have to say, in terms of Kevin, I actually did get a couple laughs out of the scene.
Right.
The whole don't transform on screen because of the budget. I laughed at that. I laughed at the X-Men reference. I laughed at am I going to be in a movie? No, I laughed at that.
Right.
But I honestly think that this episode, this would have been so much better if it was actually Kevin Feige.
Oh, 1,000% agree. Yes, yes.
I really wish it was Kevin Feige there instead of the Kevin robot. I get the idea of the joke that it's named Kevin or whatever. I even saw it coming because I had subtitles on left from Andor.
Yeah.
So it said Kevin in the subtitle.
Right.
When they said it, but Kevin when she said it.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I agree with everything you said, and the best joke in that sequence is when she's like, "I smashed the fourth wall. I smashed this. I smashed Matt Murdock." That's the best joke in the whole episode.
That was good. Yes.
Yeah. But
yeah, so part of the issues, but like we said before, like the lampshading. So part of the issue was that like, oh, the Hulk shows up randomly, and you know, and then and basically the things she complained about happened in the episode anyway.
Right.
Know?
Right.
And I'm also very confused what happened with the meal. I guess I'm not talking about the tag at the end, just like why he was there. I mean, was he just hired to speak as his normal self and wasn't really aware of all of this? Because that kind of bothered me in the sense that I liked Happy-Go-Lucky Emil. It actually really grew on me.
Right.
And I feel like they just took that all away. And I guess that was the intention for whatever the tag means of him going to go to Kamar-Taj, and that was going to happen anyway.
Right.
So, but I kind of wish that status quo stayed.
1,000%. The episodes that we liked the most, tell me if I'm wrong, but the episodes that we liked the most were the original, the pilot episode, and then where she goes to Emil Blonsky's little commune.
Yeah, basically like the last 3. It was like the first one and the last 3 or something like that. Or maybe it was the last 2. Oh, I'm sorry. You didn't like this one. The one with Daredevil and the commune one. Yeah.
Right. And so the commune one was really the one that turned it around for me. And like I made a big point when we discussed it of like how like that one scene where she's in that circle was like the best scene in the show so far. And so like that him like just being with these incel people kind of undoes that.
Well, I don't necessarily think that he was a part of it. I think they just hired him because of his antagonistic relationship with the Hulk, or his past with the Hulk, and even his dealings with She-Hulk. I think they just hired him and they thought that he would be on their side, but I don't think he actually was. Okay. But it was kind of muddy and messy, I guess.
Right.
So and again, you're right. Like they didn't have to write him in there for that, but I guess that was the intention because they knew the tag with Wong was coming, and then for whatever reason they needed to get him to Kamar-Taj.
Do you think that him going to Kamar-Taj means that he is going to be in Thunderbolts, and just in the marketing they haven't shown him to make it kind of a surprise?
No, because I think the surprise is Harrison Ford as Red Hulk.
Okay.
I'm honestly thinking that Wong and Abomination are going to be some B-list Defenders.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. Yeah. Yeah, and maybe they like recast like Iron Fist or something and they get him to be with them or something. That'd be kind of cool.
Well, I'm almost thinking of the more
Right, like
controversial version.
Namor, Hulk, Silver Surfer.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, they're
Yeah.
obviously not going to put Silver Surfer in it, but
No, that'd be cool. But Namor from this new Black Panther, that'd be cool. That would be
that's
cool.
kind of what my guess is on that.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, and this is like a little side tangent thing, but like one thing that I always thought was interesting is that if you look at the phase, like essentially 1 through 3 of Marvel, there's only really 2 established teams, right? There's the Avengers and there is the Guardians of the Galaxy, right?
True.
Now, when we move forward into like phase 4 that we're in, right, you have the Eternals and the Guardians and the Avengers, and then there's one other team that I'm not thinking of, but
I don't know if you want to count the Netflix Defenders version, but
no, not yet, because I still feel like they might rule that off as like that's another reality. Like I feel like we're gonna get all these like multiverse things when we get to like Secret Wars, and I think they might make it like the Netflix stuff is its own thing.
Many other teams? No, I guess there's not.
Maybe I'm just on drugs, but like, and they did kind of like split the Avengers into 2 teams, and they've certainly done that in the comics too, where there's like New Avengers and there's Mighty Avengers and stuff like that, right? And then Dark Avenger. Maybe I'm thinking about teams to come, and like we know we're gonna get the Fantastic Four, we know we're getting the Thunderbolts, right? We're gonna get the Young Avengers, so I feel like teams are kind of where it's at, and we're going towards that. So Defenders, that would be fucking awesome. Like I haven't seen anything of Namor besides the trailers of Black Panther, but like I'm super pumped about Namor.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah. So I just want to make sure I've finished complaining about She-Hulk. No, I haven't. So here we go. So like she has her friend. What's her friend's name? That's the
Nikki.
Woman. Okay, Nikki, and then there's Pug. Pug's easy to remember because it's so stupid, right? He said that Pug was like
Pug was Prometheus and Arrow.
That is so.
Which I didn't get that far into Arrow to actually see, but
yeah, I wonder if he had the helmet and stuff. But with Nikki and Pug, they go to resolve Jen's problem. Jen has lost her job; she can't be She-Hulk anymore because she got in trouble at that gala and or the Women's Lawyer Awards. And so Jen just basically kind of feels defeated, and so her friends go to solve it, and they go to infiltrate the incel group. And the thing is that it's like they're not the main character, right? Like they're like trying to do something for the main character. And I watch like Buffy and stuff with my daughter, and it's like obviously like the supporting cast do things sometimes, and maybe Buffy's hurt or she's depressed or something. But I feel like by the finale, you kind of need her to be like actively doing stuff. And it's like if we take out the fourth wall stuff, which we will if we ever integrate She-Hulk into the Avengers or something, then this situation will look like she accidentally stumbled onto their meeting, and like Pug and Nikki exposed these guys, and that's how the authorities came, and that's how this all got resolved in the real world.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like, what did She-Hulk really do in the real world besides like kind of accidentally stumble upon this meeting?
Yeah, I think that's like a metaphor for her reluctance to be a superhero.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of helps inform the end tag where she's going to come after people as both a lawyer and a superhero.
Right. That's sort of the way the show was going, right? Where it's like kind of like them together. Yeah, and there was also like that conversation with Matt Murdock at that picnic where he's talking about how he defends like superheroes or he has his own private practice, and then the mom was like, "Well, you must not make a lot of money." And so I think the idea is that like Jen is going to have her own practice, right?
Yes, I think Jen's going to have her own practice. She's going to have some money struggles if there's a season 2. Mm-hmm. I think this was all about getting to that point. This was about getting Jen to a point where she's a lawyer and a superhero, and then where she can exist and fit in the MCU.
Okay. Well, in these, has every single Disney Plus show been a Phase 4 show?
I think so, yeah.
Right? Because Phase 3 ends with Endgame, right? Or like Spider-Man. No, Endgame.
Isn't there one more after Endgame?
I
There's
think
always
that
one more after it usually.
I think I
Let,
think
let's.
I think it is that one because I think the very next one after Endgame is Black Widow, right? I think Black Widow is Phase
Oh, maybe
Four.
Black Widow's the one that technically ends it.
Maybe I don't know,
All
but
right. Phase 3 ends with Far From Home. Yeah, that makes sense.
Phase Three ends with Far From. Phase Three ends with Far From Home.
Far From
Oh,
Home, not No
uh,
Way Home.
okay. I'm so. What? God damn! It's been so long. You're right. That is after the blip. That's right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. I'm sorry. So, anyway, all these shows are Phase Four, and so, do you feel like, at least for the second half of Phase Four, that what Marvel does best, which is to get you excited about upcoming things, do you feel like that the mid-credit stuff, the sort of like the wrapping up, oh, what's next stuff, has been kind of lackluster?
Yeah. I can agree to that.
Right? I feel like
But
at least since.
that's
Go ahead.
that's you have to think about this in two different ways.
Okay.
One is that we've said this before that they've essentially burned through the top tier characters for the most part, and then they're trying to establish lesser characters, much like they did for Iron Man, because Iron Man would not have been considered a top tier character prior to that movie. I don't think.
Right.
I think he
Right.
would have been B tier at best,
Yes. Yes.
or A if you want to. I don't know, whatever scale you're going with.
Right.
Second level. So I think that's has to be in consideration, and then you also have to think about the sheer scale of Endgame, and that you have to have a lull after that, so that the next big thing feels important.
Right.
Like that was just a huge deal, and then nothing can compare to that.
Right.
Nothing should compare to that for a long time.
Right.
So that's
Right.
why all these things seem lesser right now. I think you could equate a lot of these things to the earlier MCU Phase One stuff, but there's just more of it now than there was then. Because what is Phase One, like 6 movies, 5 movies?
Yeah, I think it's
Six movies, and it's 6 movies, and one of them is the Avengers. So, but you could argue that Iron Man, Incredible Hulk, Iron Man 2, Thor, and Captain America are all not like nothing super crazy goes on in any of those movies
right.
in
Right.
terms of other than the implication that they're going to form the Avengers at some point. So I think it's fine for now that the teasers aren't amassing to much. I
Yeah.
think that will change as we go longer because these phases have gotten larger.
Yeah.
And like I said, there needs to be a lull before we have the big, huge Secret War stuff later on.
Yeah. You're right. You're right. I guess like essentially what they teased in this was that they showed Scar at the end at the picnic,
Yes.
and then the other thing was Wong and Abomination. And now, if Wong and Abomination is leading to what you said with like a Defenders, and they might have like Namor on the team, I'm like, yeah, okay, that's good. I'm excited about that. But otherwise, I just thought it was sort of like, oh, look at these two rapscallions. They're moving on. I didn't think it was like one of the biggest upsetting parts of one of these like post credit or mid credit scenes was in Hawkeye when they did like the Captain America musical thing, and
Yeah.
that was the post credit scene. I was like,
Yeah.
oh man, that is lame as fuck. But um, I have to say that I was just very underwhelmed when they showed Scar. And one last thing I want to say about that is I've read comics with Scar in it, and Scar's not like, oh, this is this awesome character, or like he brings a lot to the story. Like, yeah, I'm so glad they brought Scar. Like, I kind of don't give a fuck about Scar. I kind of think it's kind of silly that he has like this grown son that he like conceived like maybe 2 years ago, and now it's like a grown man.
Yeah. I have no idea what they're going to do with this. I had speculated that they were going to somehow turn this into World War Hulk, but being that he's there amicably, I have absolutely no idea what they're going to do with Hulk and Scar moving forward. The only thing I find interesting, maybe, and the only angle I can possibly take is that there seems to be maybe a parallel between Hulk and Scar and Thor and his new daughter, which his name I can't remember. So I'm wondering if they're setting up a future movie where Hulk and Thor team up with their kids to fight something.
Man, you're just like Mr. Optimistic, fun future, aren't you? For these franchises.
I have to. There's so much horrible things in the world. I have to have my escape somewhere.
Yes. Well, let's do this. Let's think of who is established from the Young Avenger team so far, and let's see if we can add.
Oh my God! Wait a minute. What if they're just gonna throw Scar in as a replacement for Hulkling?
Right. That's kind of what I was getting at. Was that like, what if all these children characters are actually just members of this new Young Avengers? Let's just establish who we know are from the Young Avengers that we've seen before. Wanda's two kids, right?
Yep.
Then we've also seen who?
Wiccan and Speed, yeah. That's
Wiccan and Speed. Then we've seen the kid that's Patriot or whatever.
Elijah. No, wait. Is it Isaiah? Elijah's the son. Patriot.
Right.
We've seen him.
So we've seen him. Then we've seen Stature
and Kate Bishop.
So that's 5. Have we seen any other Young Avenger type?
I mean,
people?
I wouldn't roll out a Kid Loki at this point.
Right.
I think they could. I think they honestly can and will throw in Miss Marvel into this.
Okay, so Miss Marvel, so that's essentially 6. You could have 8 then if you brought in Scar and I don't know what they call her, but at the end of Love and Thunder,
I guess Love.
Right. I know that like in the comics, there was a time where they had like a young character on.
Oh my God! And then they could throw in. I assume they're going to throw in Ironheart as a replacement for Iron Lad.
That's a big fucking team already. Without bringing in Scar and Love or whatever her name is.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, you could do it. You're talking like maybe like 8 or 9 characters. I mean, it could kind of work. But
yeah, I mean, X-Men movies exist where there are that many characters.
Oh yeah,
Maybe that's not a great example though.
Yeah, right. I like the idea of them essentially being on those teams and they're kind of comparable. I still think there's potential for what you could do. There is there's other like teams with young characters on them, and one of the teams I can think of is Nick Fury's Secret Warriors that he had.
Okay.
And Nick Fury's Secret Warriors were because like Hydra essentially had taken over everything secretly, which we already kind of got in Captain America Winter Soldier. But
yeah, I feel like they kind of covered that kind of stuff or they did that sort of story with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah, right. Exactly, they did. So like,
not that counts anymore.
Yeah, but on that team in the comics, you had Ares, who was the son of, Ares, the god of war, who was on the Dark Avengers, and then he had a son named Phobos, and Phobos is like a god on the team, and so I feel like Thor's adopted daughter is almost like the equivalent of him, even though it's a girl, different father,
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, obviously they have a lot to work with to build things.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So, okay, we've spent a lot of time talking about She-Hulk. Why don't we go ahead and do our rankings of the existing...
Oh, before we do that, I got to ask the big question here.
Uh-oh.
Do you think there will be a She-Hulk season 2? And would you be interested? Do you still think there's any potential in this show?
I absolutely do. I think that shows that sort of are lukewarm or not that interesting in the first season, I think sometimes they like kind of learn from what went wrong and they come back strong for a second season.
Okay. So yeah, I also agree. I am very mixed on the show overall.
Yeah.
But I still do see potential in it, and I do hope we get a second season.
Yeah. I mean, back in the day when you would binge watch shows that had already been on, but now they're all on Netflix or something, there'd be that one part where you're like, oh, we'll just get through season 1, and then season 2 is where it really gets good, And that happens.
Oh yeah, we've said that about other shows on this show. So
right, exactly. And of course, there's the inverse too, where it's like, oh, season 1 was really good, and then it kind of went off the rails. But I feel like She-Hulk has the potential to do that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, let's do our rankings. Do you want to go first, or do you want me to go first?
Sure. From the bottom, number 9. What if? Still, it's more my not liking of CG animated shows.
Right.
Otherwise, it's not a bad show. But it's going to take the lowest spot for me. After that, still number 8, Moon Knight. Still the most dissatisfied with that show overall.
Yes.
Beyond that, next I have at 7 Miss Marvel. I still liked it, but it's lower tier for me. And I play She-Hulk here.
Okay.
I think I still think it's not a great show. I don't love it. I don't hate it either, though. So it's kind of right in the middle. I still think there's potential here. And then my other rankings from there is Falcon Winter Soldier, Loki. I tossed in Werewolf by Night at number 3. I don't know if you remember to put that in there. I really liked it. I really liked the idea of this special presentation idea, which I believe that you're going to do with Nova.
Yeah.
And then I have number 2 WandaVision and number 1 Hawkeye, which I know we don't agree on either.
Honestly, we don't agree with almost all these on the list, which is fun because you and I usually agree about pretty much everything, you know? So it's cool that our rankings are so different. I did forget to put on Werewolf by Night, but I think I know where to stick it in. Haha. There we go. So anyway, let's do...
It's the Bloodstone.
There you go. Nice. No, I meant Man-Thing. Anyway, so... if we go at the very bottom, then Moon Knight. I feel the exact same way. Dissatisfied with the show. I don't have it at the... I don't have What If at the bottom, but you had Moon Knight at the second to last.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so here we go. Right above that is She-Hulk for me.
Okay.
That's how much I didn't like it, right? Okay, now here's where we're very different. Hawkeye is right above She-Hulk. Okay.
Yeah, we've gone through this plenty of times.
Right. Ms. Marvel would be above Hawkeye, and then I would put Werewolf by Night between Ms. Marvel and then Loki.
Okay.
Then in my top 3, we have What If, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and WandaVision. So we both have one.
What If is 3?
I didn't do 3.
No. What If is 3? So
What If is 3?
3, 2, 1.
Yeah.
Okay. So your top is WandaVision and then Falcon and Winter Soldier.
Yes.
So
I just didn't put.
Really, I don't think your lists are that drastically different. So like a Hawkeye, What If, and yeah, that's really the only major switch there. I think is Hawkeye and What If.
Yeah.
Everything else was within 2 or 3.
Okay.
Of each other.
Yeah. I mean, like, I think though that it's interesting when we do have these like very different rankings for specific ones. Like the majority might be similar, but then very different rankings for specific ones. Like certain shows landed differently for us. Like clearly Hawkeye landed differently for us.
Yeah, I like it. It's such a clear thing for me that I loved Hawkeye the most.
Yeah,
like it's indisputable to me. For me, that was my favorite, and that brings me to the point of like every time I see someone mention She-Hulk on Twitter, it's like someone's either saying She-Hulk was the best show of everything, number 1, and then someone in the comments is like, "What the fuck is wrong with you? It was the stupidest, dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life." Right. And that's really it. It's either 1 or 8. Like or 9, whatever you want to call it.
Right. And that's a really good point. And like when I looked up She-Hulk on Twitter, the tweets themselves were all that they loved She-Hulk. And it made me kind of feel like Star Wars: The Last Jedi, because I remember when I came out of The Last Jedi, I was like, oh, this is a good Star Wars movie. Like, I liked this. And I come out and like everyone's like, Last Jedi sucks. My thoughts have kind of changed on it since then. I don't think it's the worst thing in the world, but I also don't hold it as high as I did. But like,
funny. I walked out of it hating it, but I rewatched it later on and I ended up loving it. And I think it's my favorite of it's easily my favorite of the sequel trilogy.
Okay, out of the sequel trilogy, it is my favorite as well because it's sort of like the most unique or has its own story for the most part.
Yeah.
But yeah. I kind of have problems with the sequel trilogy. It's probably because I'm a misogynist and a woman is the main character.
Yeah. I mean, how could a woman be a Jedi? I mean,
I know, and the most powerful one, definitely Mary Sue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And where does Leia go? I'm not going to get into these bad jokes.
Right. But if you guys like misogyny and you hate Mary Sue's, then you definitely can subscribe to the Laster Cat. No, wait, that's even the wrong channel. Comic Books Transformed. No, Danny likes women too, I promise. No, Comic Books Transformed. That's this channel. Subscribe. We have this channel and we have our podcast too. And let us know, what do you all think of our rankings too? I want to know what you guys think of our rankings. Do you agree with me? Do you agree with Brian? What do you all think? All right, you ready to Andor it up?
No, I have one more thing to say actually. I don't think we joked about being canceled for this episode. I don't think so.
No. No. That was the whole point. Is that like I truly think that like if we're gonna talk about stuff that we're passionate about, which is obviously like media, comic books, and stuff like that, people can criticize stuff regardless of if it's about a man or a woman or if it's about a person that's black or white. Like it just matters on the story, you know?
Yeah.
And like the thing is, I think that like Falcon and the Winter Soldier deals with race quite a bit. But then every other Marvel thing, it kind of deals with personal problems and then like macro problems. Like this show and Falcon and the Winter Soldier really were about like, this is about women and this is about race. But then the rest were like individual problems and macro problems, you know?
Yeah.
And so like, I don't personally, I don't like the idea of like, marketing something, or like when people do their media tours, they say, well, oh, people just don't like it because they're incels or they live in their mother's basement. I hate when celebrities do that shit, because it's like you're basically you're setting it up to like, oh, you disagree? Well, you must be a racist. You must be a misogynist. And it's like, you can't do that because it's cheating. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I find it ironic that I'm like, oh, they say guys that live in their mother's basement. Meanwhile, I'm in my garage. Like I look like I'm in my mother's basement. You know,
I am in a basement. It's my own basement.
Yes,
basement.
Yes, but see, I'm not. Brian might be a misogynist because he has like 2 feminine transformers, but I have a dollhouse. Look at that. Yes, from my grandmother. So I love women. Okay. Anyway, sorry. There's women in this episode too of Andor, episode 6, The Eye. And what are your thoughts on Andor, first of all?
I mean, obviously, we know the show's sticking to like a little 3-episode arc here so far, and then that's continued here. We expected the big heist to go down here, and it goes downhill pretty fast for the characters anyway. I really did like this episode a lot. This show continues to be, it's shaping up to be my favorite Star Wars show.
Yep. If we do our ranking the way it is going currently, it would probably be at the top, over Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett. Yes. Yeah. So one of the things that I like about it, and you've said this in the past few episodes that we've done, and then other people I've talked to. I talked to my friend Jay last night, and he's a big fan of the show. It's that we're seeing this ground level stuff. We're seeing how the Empire affects people. And Jay has always said to me that he wishes we could see more examples of how hard it is living under the Empire. And I think that this show, besides showing that, what it does even more is it shows what it's like to live within the Empire. And in this episode, you have this one guy they take hostage. His name is Commandant J-Hold Behaz. This is your Star Wars weird name, right?
Yep.
And he's taking his family along a tour of this garrison that he's in charge of. And the family gets held hostage. But before that happens, we kind of see an Imperial officer with his wife and his kid. And I don't think I've maybe ever seen that in Star Wars, ever.
Yeah, no, they have absolutely humanized the Empire in this show just as much as they're humanizing the rebels, Right. And they're showing the ugliness of the rebels too, which you don't often see. But like you said, the rebels here, they look awful when they're holding a family hostage. They really do.
Right.
You kind of question like who's bad here, But ultimately, because of what we know about the universe and the Star Wars universe, we know the Empire is really truly the evil side. So, but still, it's like for a fraction of a second, you're kind of questioning it.
Yes. I mean, ultimately, we're always going to know that the Empire is evil because they have this like dark wizard that's in charge of it, right? And his evil cyborg henchman. But there are cases that are made throughout the movies and especially the comics and the books where it's like the Empire brings order to the galaxy. And so it's like there's corruption, but the Empire gets rid of corruption. So you can kind of see how people are bought into it and they believe in the Empire. but it also makes the heroes look like terrorists, like you said, like when they're holding like a little kid at gunpoint.
Yeah.
And so we see things like you said go downhill very quickly. One of my questions for you, and I asked this to Jay last night too, was, did you see Commander Gorn, who was like the double agent for the rebels, and he was on the Empire side? Did you see him get killed?
Yes, but only after I went back. It is such a quick flash. It's in the background. You see Vel
Is Vel the former stormtrooper?
leader.
Oh, okay, the leader's Vel. Yeah, this blonde woman. Yeah,
she's taking cover, and you see him get shot and fall. Like, you don't even see his face, but you see the uniform and you see it. Like, I had to go back and find him. Like, what the hell happened to this guy?
Right.
They made it much bigger. They made it much. Tamarin's death was a lot more prominent, so it was odd that they didn't show that at all. But I guess I'm not surprised there. Like, I imagine in the chaos of a battle like that, and a plan kind of getting all messed up, that's what happens. Things that happen you don't see, and you have to kind of go. I mean, it's a little weird that no one commented on it at all after he died too. Like, they commented on Tamarin, they commented on it's Nemec.
I mean,
he was obviously on the ship, but yeah, it was a little strange. Also, a little strange that both black guys died right there.
Yes. Well, that's what I was going to say, is that, like, I remember they showed the one guy die, and they really stood out that he was a former stormtrooper, and that in itself was interesting because Finn is a former stormtrooper. He's also a black actor playing a stormtrooper, and like, it was so much more interesting in this little glimpse here of like 30 seconds of this guy being a former stormtrooper than Finn in the entire sequel trilogy.
Yes, because he was much more militaristic than Finn was. Finn was very much kind of goofy.
Right.
And just does not seem like a stormtrooper at all. I mean, I guess stormtroopers are also kind of goofy in a different way, but yeah, this was more along the lines of like, holy shit, that TIE fighter is terrifying. Like holy shit, stormtroopers are terrifying, rather than that stormtrooper just hit his head in that door.
Right. I think that, like, one of the parts I dislike the absolute most about The Rise of Skywalker is there's a part when Finn and Poe are on a First Order ship, and they're just like shooting stormtroopers left and right and just running. And it's just like so easy that they're shooting them. It's like you're in a video game or something. They're just like, and the stormtroopers just fall over. The stormtrooper like opens the door and gets shot. Like, I hate that. It's like, they're the fucking enemies. They should be scary.
Yeah, and they other Star Wars media showed that the TIE fighters are nothing to scoff at, really. They're very easy to blow up. They don't have shields, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
But stormtroopers are worse in that regard.
Right.
Like, they are a joke. They can't hit the broadside of a barn. What they did in Obi-Wan, all shooting the door, like everything. No. Tamarin, when they announced him as a stormtrooper, and they showed him it being all, lieutenant commander here, like, that was like, shit, maybe stormtroopers should be scary.
Right.
More.
Yeah. Totally agree. And so then, like, it was sad when he got killed. Like, oh man, we should have gotten through it. But like, Tamarin walked so that Finn could yell Rey, multiple times in the sequel trilogy. But anyway, going back to the idea of like the rebels sort of getting taken out and how easily they're taken out. One thing this show stresses is like how when you're a rebel, it's so dangerous that you kind of just have to look out for yourself and you have to just keep moving forward, even if your friend's getting shot. At one point, they leave behind, I think Cinta is this other woman that's on their team. They just leave her behind on the base,
I think that was planned, though.
Oh, that was the plan?
I think that was what they always intended, that she was just going to walk out in the uniform, because otherwise, why would she have had that uniform? And yeah, it was a little strange, though, I think.
Yeah.
I think what that really shows, though, is that these people sat there for months and months and months making this plan and perfecting it, and they still were just not prepared for what was actually happening. And that was a good thing in terms of, the drama and tension for the show. This heist absolutely needed to go bad.
Oh yeah.
And it did go failed pretty spectacular. I mean, I guess they got away with some of the money, but not as much, not all of it for sure.
Right. Right.
And I think, yeah, like I enjoyed the fact that they seemed to, they allotted this amount of time to load all the stuff in and do all these things, and it was nowhere near enough anything. So just to show that their general inexperience and or lack of experience, really.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there was a ton of money on there. And yeah, I actually was like, oh shit, how are they gonna pull this off? When I saw all that money, I was like,
Yeah,
there's
they
so
said 10
much.
minutes. Like they moved like 3 things. Like what the hell are they doing?
Right. So you talked before about the guys going in the TIE fighters, and I think I almost started crying at that point because like it had been done so well, it was so tense that I was like, I was just so happy that I felt this tension from
Yeah.
a Star Wars show. I was like, oh, this is good. This is good storytelling. And then when they were like climbing into the TIE fighter cockpits, I was like, oh, this is like scary that the TIE fighters are coming. And everyone essentially gets taken out except for Cassian and the leader.
Yeah. And Cinta.
Right. It was really rough when the boy that had the Nemec, the manifesto, he gets like crushed by the money because like I haven't really seen that in a Star Wars movie where like
it was a fairly mundane death, essentially because he just got hit by something and just broke his spine, and they drugged him up to get him to do his job, and then he passed afterwards.
Yeah, hardcore, man. So then we come to this end where you have what the fuck was the guy's Skeen, right? And
I want to talk about Skeen quite a bit here.
Do it.
So Skeen is heavily advocating for them to go to this doctor that they have sort of built into their plan, but Vel thinks that they should just go to the original meeting point and skip over the doctor. And then Skeen is like, kind of has like a little bit of a character turn here, where he's like suggesting to Andor, like, hey, why don't we just go steal all this stuff and split it 50-50? Mm-hmm. And that like really took me by surprise.
Right.
And I'm not sure if I meant that's in a good or bad way yet. I haven't really decided yet, because he basically says that the story he told about his brother and the Empire, ruining his life and all that. He says, I don't have a brother. I made it up.
Right.
So then why is he there?
I think maybe to get the money, right?
I suppose. I don't know. It just seems odd that this group of people would have been brought together just to steal money. Like how would he have known that they would just wanted to steal money?
Yeah.
I guess. It absolutely makes sense for Andor because he's getting paid to do this, but Skeen clearly was not. But so I think it calls into question his involvement a little bit too much for my tastes.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it leads Andor to make a hard decision and just shoot him on the spot. Like you mentioned, that's something he does.
Yeah.
And it kind of wraps up for the most part, all the characters in this arc. So we can move on to it and get another set of characters next week.
Yeah. And when Cassian kills him, it was very brutal. It was almost like he like punched him with the blaster. It was just like,
yeah.
I thought that was really cool. And so sudden. I was like, oh shit. But that's kind of his thing. When you have a heist, it's like every person has to fulfill a role. And obviously, the guy's former stormtrooper, it makes sense. The guy that's working with the Empire, it makes sense. The manifesto kid, he was like the one that kind of like, I think, planned out like how to fly out through the eye. I think that was his thing.
Yeah, he was kind of essential in the actual planning. He made the models for the base and all that, so they can kind of visualize what they needed to do.
Right.
But ultimately, he was the heart of the group.
Absolutely, yeah.
The idealist. So, and I think that we see Vel. God, her name is Vel, right?
Sure, why not? Yeah. Blonde woman.
The leader, the blonde lady. She insists upon Andor taking his manifesto, and I think that's going to be an important thing moving forward.
Absolutely. I'm just wondering what Skeen's role was then specifically, because you asked the question of, would he join this group just knowing that he was stealing money, and then would he kind of commit to this sort of harsh life for months just to get this money? I do think that's very possible. I do think a criminal would commit months to something if they knew they were going to get a big payout. But I wonder what his role was on the team. Maybe it was muscle. I don't know.
Well, we're not exactly sure. Obviously, Andor pilots the ship out, but that was not his. He was intended to be as a backup to everyone, so maybe he was supposed to be the pilot.
Maybe, yeah. I don't know, man. I'm a big fan of the show. We still have 6 episodes left?
Yep, halfway through the season now.
Yeah, keep it coming. We are now minus a second show, She-Hulk, and so next week you and I are going to discuss Black Adam, though, right?
Yes.
Black Adam and Andor. Okay, cool.
I'm already seeing stuff about it. I'm seeing sort of not as extreme as She-Hulk, I guess, but I'm seeing it was terrible and it was great. I've heard rumors of the end credits tag being spoiled and online already.
Oh wow!
And I've heard of what it could be, and I'm not sure, but I'm trying not to look at it.
Right. I think we've heard the same thing too. I think I'll save it just so we don't spoil it for our viewers. But I think we know what we're talking about. Yeah. So we have that, and we have Andor next week, and then Brian and I are eventually going to start doing Lock and Key, and we're going to just do one big episode for the first season, and then we'll do season 2 and then season 3. So if you guys have not subscribed to the channel already, please do. We're going to keep talking about Andor until it's done, and we want to know what you guys think about Andor as well. So please, I always say, give us some comments, because I love hearing what other people think about this stuff. But otherwise, me and Brian will see you next week. Cool, man. All right.